Show. I'm Tosh Taylor.
And I'm Jenna Morton. And on this episode, we are going to dive into a subject that I bet many of you, as soon as I say the word, you're going to go, ugh. But that is exactly why we're going to talk about it, so that you don't have that reaction. Today, we are talking about math. And to do that, we are joined by Sarah Noseworthy. Hello, welcome back.
Thank you very much. Glad to be back.
So we've had you on the show before to talk about this, but it's definitely a topic that is worth touching on all the time.
Yes,
I think, especially each fall, really good to have this reminder that your motto, we can all be math people.
Yes. We are all math people. There's no math gene. Some people might be more inclined to pick up certain topics quicker than others, but we can all learn math.
Okay.
Yes.
That's fair. I still have this look on Tasha's face, like I'm not convinced I'm a math person.
We've done this before, but I did feel better about it the last time we talked, and I have found that the way that I speak to my kids about math is different now because of you. So thank you.
Amazing.
Yes,
that's great.
I appreciate that. Can we talk a little bit about you and your math and how you are teaching kids to do so with your own private classes?
So right now I own and operate the SN Learning Studio, which is an in-person math classroom in Riverview in the old Gunningsville Court School. So I have my own classroom and I do group sessions. I have middle school groups and I have high school groups. And I'm actually also working with Riverbend Community School. I'm doing their math programming for them this year. So lots of different things. I also have some online programs too, because coming in person just isn't an option for everybody. So I have an online program for grade 4-5. It's kind of like a middle school math prep course. And I'm in the designing process of creating a preschool math program. Just kind of like, it's very fun, it's all play-based, it's not like super technical or anything, but it's just for families who maybe feel like, okay, I want my child to have a good math experience. How can I just kind of plant those seeds just to give them some direction with stuff they could do around their own home?
I love that. I think for me, I was thinking about this coming to talk with you today about, you know, how we structure ourselves and what we say about ourselves and math. And I realized that when my kids were little, I didn't feel worried about math and talking about math. And it felt very easy to incorporate little things into the daily routine and to talk about, oh, well, if I have 2 apples and you're going to have 2 more, you know, that kind of very preschool level stuff. But now that they're in middle school, like, I don't know how to just incorporate more math into daily conversation or into things, because it's at a different level where it starts to be like, oh, no, maybe I need to get my calculator out.
And that's okay too. Calculators certainly have their place. One of the biggest, most effective things you can do for anybody is just work on general perseverance, general problem solving. That's going to help them in all areas of life, but especially in math. Because in math, like, we tend to think, oh, if I'm good at math, it'll be easy. But really, math is not super easy, and that's okay. So getting good at math kind of means like, okay, I'm willing to struggle through something. And if you can foster that kind of growth mindset, just in general, you're doing them a huge service in math. But there are also lots of fun real world explanations, like, or things you can talk about with your middle schooler. Grocery stores are great, like price comparisons. I was on Amazon last night. I was trying to decide between 2 different sizes of something to buy, and there were like multiple things. It was like a package deal. And you usually think if you buy more, you're getting a better price, but I was like, I'm gonna look and see what's actually the best unit price. And like just little things like that. Like, what's the best deal when you're traveling? Like, how far from here to here? Talking distance, talking time management. That's math.
That's interesting. And one of the worst maths as an adult is doing like toilet paper math or, you know, paper towel math. And my oldest, who's in middle school too, she said the same thing. She's like, how do you sit and figure out which one's which? You don't just buy the best price. I'm like, you can't just buy the best price. It might look great, but what if they're only 1 ply? It doesn't add up.
Or what if it's
Yes.
6 rolls versus 12
Yeah.
rolls?
Yeah.
There's so much that goes
Yeah.
into it. There's a really cool site, a math site that's called Would You Rather, and there's a lot of different questions like that, comparing prices, but it also takes into account like your own preferences too. Like, would you rather have, there's 2 different piles of change, and one might be like 150 pennies, and one might be like 6 quarters. So, you know, like same amount of money, but what would you rather? Or maybe the one with the quarters has a little bit less money, but I'll still prefer that because I don't want this pocket of
5
change.
to 150.
Right? So like there's the math side, but there's also like the real life, what makes sense side too.
That's fantastic because that is such a part of what we actually do when we're trying to decide those things. Like when you're talking about toilet paper math, like sure, you can get it in bulk, but then you have to store it.
Yeah.
Do you have the space in your house?
Yeah.
Which again is a math thing. And
Exactly.
do you have the space
Yeah.
to hold this? Which
Make it make sense. Yeah.
I have to say that's what it didn't probably dawn on me at the time. Like, no, it's a space thing as well, which
Yep.
is
Also
completely
math.
math.
Yeah.
Also math, yes,
Yeah.
like packing, what's going to fit in this box, spatial stuff. A lot of people who, well, I saw this often in my middle school, kids who might have taken a little bit longer to work on calculations and like what we think of as math, like adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, when we would move to more spatial topics like geometry or, you know, orientations of 3D objects, that's where they'd be like, oh, I can do this. And so it's just kind of like 2 different types of math. We think of math as just the numbers, but there's so much more of it. Yeah.
Yeah, as there is with any subject too,
Yeah.
right? Like you can't characterize math into, you know, just numbers or just this, just that.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to middle school, I have found, like you said, pulling out the calculator, holy moly.
I'm like, yeah, I know what to put in the calculator anymore.
Oh, well, that too, knowing what to put in the calculator. We did a lot last year, so Sarah was in grade 6 last year, and that was the year of shapes and more geometry,
Yeah.
really, and figuring out, like, you know, the
Area
length
and
of
perimeter
Oh my gosh.
of different, yeah.
Do you think I remember how to do that? I don't. And then on top of it, they don't do it the same that we were taught how to do
Yes.
it. So
Yeah.
then there's the big difference of new math, which
Yes.
has always been an issue for me because I don't understand it.
Well, the thing about new math is, like, math is math. It's the way we teach it that it's really changed. And back when we were in school, it was a lot more focused on rote memorization. And that could make us feel like we were really good at math, because especially if we were good at copying and just repeating a procedure over and over, that could make us feel like, ooh, I'm really good. But then 3 weeks later, you're like, blank, nothing. I don't remember anything because I never really understood it in the first place. And then when I'm presented with this problem or a real life example, I see no relation between this problem and those numbers I was calculating before, because it was just a procedure, not actual real life thinking skills. So the new math is very much more about, let's build a conceptual understanding of what's actually going on here. Let kids play around with it. Let kids kind of struggle. Productive struggle is really, really important in math. So if we were never taught that way, yeah, it's going to feel weird, but sit with the weird.
It's a good motto for life. I like
Sit
that,
with
yeah.
the weird.
Yeah.
Get comfortable with the weird. Yeah, the different.
Yeah, it's funny. I say that to my kids all the time when they come and ask me about a math problem, especially if my husband is not home yet, because he is very good with numbers
Yeah.
and has kept up with doing things and just has it in his head in a very different way than I do. And I will say, like, I was a very good student. I had high 90s in math in high school, like pre-calculus. I literally have to stop and think to add 2 numbers now, and it's because I was a good student. And so at the time when I was building up to it, I could do it. And so I'm like, I'm not sure what the answer is, but you're the one who's been practicing, so take me
Yeah.
through what you've been learning and what you've been talking about, and let's see if we can't figure this out together. And if we can't, you're gonna ask Dad when he gets home.
And that's so good, like, for your child to see you be like, okay, I see the math problem. I don't immediately know what to do, and I'm okay with that. Because when we expect to know something right away and we don't, that's when the frustration can start to build. So it's so valuable to model to your kids, like the problem solving steps. How am I going to approach this? How am I going to try to figure it out? How can we do this together? And if you make a mistake, so important to be like, that's okay. Oh, cool. Look what I just learned by doing this mistake. Not like, don't like put yourself down or kind of shame mistakes. That's a really big thing we would want to avoid. like I celebrate mistakes. When my students make mistakes, I'm like, oh yes, now look what we're gonna learn. We're gonna be detectives and we're gonna figure out what went wrong and then we're gonna learn from that. Yeah,
I like the
mistakes are
way
good.
you phrase things so nicely all the time, like such a positive spin on it. I can imagine the kids in your classroom are like being detectives and having a great time in there.
Yep.
How many kids are you taking per session?
I max out at 4.
Yeah.
The only way I would go over 4, I do have an assistant teacher who will come in sometimes, so we'll be like 2 teachers for a group, and in that case I would go up to 6.
Okay.
But that's my max for a group, either 4 to 1 or 2 to 6. Yeah.
Talk a little bit more about the programs that you're offering, and if people are just, discovering you right now, like are there spots open? What can people expect if they reach out to you?
So I do have some high school spots available right now for term 1. My term 2 is fully booked just because of the way the high school system works with the semesters, but term 1 I've got 2 for sure, maybe 3 positions open. That's on Tuesday afternoons. So for my high schoolers, the way we run our program is they come to me generally with their work. Usually they need help getting through assignments, understanding what's going on, preparing for a test. I have a plethora of resources that I can draw from to support them if they're not understanding what they're working on. But for the most part with my high schoolers, they come to me like needing help because there's so much content that they're just trying to get through. We talk a lot about math mindset with my high schoolers because a lot of them are very anxious when it comes to testing. They have like test anxiety, that's a real thing. So sometimes they'll say, well, I understand what's going on in class, or I understand when we're working here, but then when I get to a test, I go blank. And that is so common, and I talk to them a lot about how we can calm our brain before we go into a test or when we sit down to a test, to try to just make sure that we're in a state where we can access the information we already have in our brain. Talk about like your amygdala, your fight and flight instinct versus your prefrontal cortex, which is where like you store your memory and you access your information. And that amygdala can like override your logical thinking part of your brain. So we talk about how can we calm that amygdala? How can we calm ourselves down to access what we already know? I do that with my middle schoolers too. My middle schoolers is a lot more game-based stuff. Like I know the progression of information that they're supposed to be learning, so they kind of talk to me about what they're doing in class. Sometimes they bring work in that they need help with, but often it's like, okay, I know what you're working on generally now. How can we make it fun? And we play a lot of games together.
Nice.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, that's such good advice, I think, for anyone going into a testing scenario or an interview or something that you might have, even in your work life as an adult, of taking that time to really think about how your brain is processing what you're heading into.
Yeah.
Absolutely. When it comes to our 2 different school systems, do you work with kids from the French school system and the English school system? Are they learning different things at the same time?
The curriculum is the same for the province.
Okay.
The pacing or the order they might do things in could be different. I work primarily with the Anglophone, not like on purpose, that's just because English is my first language. And I have had people ask me, do you do French sessions? And my answer is always, I can speak to them in French, I can understand their material, but I'm not giving a French session.
Right.
So for the most part, that's just not what they're looking for. So, but most of my kids are in French immersion. So like we can definitely make it bilingual. I have French resources, but yeah, it's primarily an English session.
Okay.
Well, and I found math is numbers. Numbers go across languages. It doesn't, the words around it may be slightly different, but even then, a lot of them sound very similar.
They do. There are some that trip them up because I've had kids that go between French, or they were in French immersion, now they're in English. And there's a little bit of a learning curve with some of the vocabulary. But yeah, in general, the numbers are the numbers.
Yeah. I think that's really cool, and I love that you're working alongside of Riverbend now as well. What grades does Riverbend have in there? Are you still? Is it still middle school age?
They start right from kindergarten now.
Wow.
Yeah, so K to about grade 8, and it's very like multi-leveled classes, so it's pretty cool. The kids that I'm working with are the older kids, so I have them age-wise, they're grade 4 to about 9. And so we're just covering a variety of material, and I'm actually using my online course as the the base of their learning so that they can do it at their own pace, which has been really, really helpful. So it's really cool to see them using their tech, working through things at their own pace, being very independent with like, I know where to go get my things, I know what I need to do, and here's where I get this, here's where I ask for help. There's 9 different kids doing 9 different things, but it's like this harmonious little room. It's so cute. Yeah.
It's fantastic. I think that's one of the things about online learning that people of, say, our age and older are not quite as comfortable or familiar with. But I've been watching, my daughter's in grade 8 this year, and she was using an online English grammar program, and they had been assigned like do this one little part of it, and she loved it because it was something she was interested in. It was challenging her, and she just sat there and she was going through it, and she finally got tripped up on something. She asked me, and I'm like, no, this is the stuff I'm supposed to be able to help you with, and I'm not really confident in my answer here because it's this very specific grammar thing. And when she went to class the next day to show her teacher's like, how far ahead of this did you go?
Self-paced.
Exactly, which is so like I think that's the fabulous part of online programming that we're just kind of catching up to in the sense that yes, when someone has an interest in something, they don't get stymied by their age or by their grade. They can go with it, and a good teacher and leader can still show them how to integrate that into whatever they're doing in their classroom setting.
That's such a good point. Yeah, definitely all online learning is not the same, but it's really cool when you can set yourself up so that you're not just teaching to this middle group. You can have something in place that supports people who are still addressing unfinished learning, who still need some extra support, and your high flyers that are going to be bored otherwise. It's so cool. In that way, the teacher kind of becomes like a facilitator. I'm providing you with this rich material you can access in a way that is good for you, and then the teacher is freed up to float around and check in with everybody, and they actually get so much more individual attention in this kind of a situation.
Excellent, and we all know that individual attention is extremely important when it comes to your child's learning. But I want to stay on the working with your online program, because there are a lot of parents now that are homeschooling. Is that something that they could use in their curriculum as well?
Yeah, I'm getting more and more homeschoolers kind of touching base with me, and it would be ideal for a homeschooling situation. If you don't already have a program that you love, this would be a really good option for homeschoolers. For kids that are in upper elementary, want to get ready, to access that middle school math material. So the online program comes with a physical binder. That's a really big thing for me. I don't just want kids watching videos and not doing anything else. So my videos are interactive. So it may be a 10-minute video, but there's 6 different points along the way where you have to pause and you have to try something on your own, then you hit play again, and then you get that immediate feedback. What you're doing, are you on the right track? And then I use a program called IXL, which is an online program for practicing math. So after they've learned a lesson with me and done the practice stuff with me on the video, then they'll go on IXL, do a little bit of practice. And I also have manipulatives, like number tiles, fraction tiles. So they're physically like using things, dry erase sheets and markers, like they're physically doing things while they're watching the video and engaging with the video. And then there's like a check-in, kind of like a little quiz sort of at the end to say, did you get it, before you move on. Yeah, so it's got lots of different modalities kind of incorporated into the one course.
Do you feel like you're seeing a shift in your students and in the families that surround them in starting to change the way they talk about math, right? You said like you want everyone to be able to say, no, we are all math people.
Yeah.
Are you seeing that come through?
Yes, definitely. Like I've had conversations with, especially the students who have been with me for a few years. The parents see the shift in the kids, and I'll talk to the parents about like how we got there and how their voice matters, and just that growth mindset. Which I know teachers in schools are really teaching too, the whole growth mindset thing. You can learn anything, your brain can change. But yeah, parents are definitely seeing the confidence building in their child, and they see that kind of positive reinforcement they can do at home as well.
Yeah, and then adding things into your life, like you go do the toilet paper math for me.
Yeah, give them a challenge for sure.
But that's something that I had to do with my oldest. She found math in middle school very hard. Like she found that grade 5 did not prepare her for the difference in math in grade 6, and it was kind of a sore spot for her through the year because she'd always been like it came easy to her, and then all of a sudden it was very difficult for her, which was unfortunate to see, but it also came down to the classroom setting and stuff as well. But then I looked at my second child and went, if this one's finding it difficult, then for sure my younger one is going to find it even more difficult. So I wonder if you find a lot of parents seeing that, like come second child, it's like, okay, hang on a second here. Like, so we're going to need to put this one into a program so that they don't have the same problems that the first one had.
I have a lot of siblings. Yes, I have families of 4 where I have all of their kids, families of 3 where I see all of their kids at all different levels. And I don't really work in person with the really young ones, but I have some that are lined up. Okay, when she gets to grade 4, put her on the list, right? So, because they're seeing their siblings having fun. That even happened with the online course. I had an older sibling by the course, and then younger brother was like, I want a binder too. And I want to do it too. So I made another binder for the little brother because he was just seeing her have fun with it. But like you mentioned middle school as kind of like a shift, and it certainly is. The pace is different. The environment in middle schools is different. So even like math stuff aside, just the learning environment can be trickier in middle school too. But I do see grade 6 as a big entry point for people contacting me for the first time, being like, math is getting hard now. Like they used to feel confident with it and now they're struggling. So yeah, I have 3 different middle school groups that I work with.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I would think that would be an important thing to highlight is, if you're starting to feel that struggle, then you want to build the confidence before they go on to high school, before it becomes an even harder hurdle to tackle.
And the high school math, what kids are struggling with in high school is the middle school content. It's not the higher level concepts that they're not grasping. It's getting past all of the middle school level calculations that you need to do to access that higher level content. That's what I'm really seeing with my high schoolers. They're getting bogged down with fractions and integers, which is not a high school topic. They can graph and they can understand quadratic formulas, but they're messing up their calculations trying to get to the correct answer, even though they know how to do it. It's just all those little details.
Wow.
Yeah.
The details matter.
Yes.
And speaking of details, people are going to want to know how to get in touch with you, how to find your programs, the ones that are taking new students as well as the online stuff. So where can everyone find you?
In general, Math Coach Canada. If you just Google that on Instagram, on YouTube, you'll find me. I do have a website, sarahnoseworthy.com. I need to update it, so hopefully by the time this airs, I'll have fixed it up a little bit, but it's mostly relevant. There just might be some dates that are incorrect there. There's also a form on my website where they can pre-register a child that will just let me know some information about your child, so you can either join a session or be on a wait list for a session.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Amazing. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks so much, and thank you all for watching and listening. We'll see you next week.